everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Building an Integrated Automotive Supply Chain from Concept to Customer. Today, our guest speaker is going to be David Eyes. He's the Director of DI Automotive Solutions. Welcome, David. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ivy. Pleasure to be here.
All right, so we're going to kick it off with the agenda. First, we're going to talk about some of the automotive industry updates. As you can imagine, the reflections on 2020 and what's to come for the future, as well as the evolution of automotive challenges. So what we've seen in the past, what we're currently seeing, and what we can expect to see as things evolve. We'll go over a roadmap to the digital supply chain and aligning that product and supply chain development as well. So I always like to do a lot of research on the industry. David's in it every day. But before we kick it off and go into depth, I want to discuss what's going on. And so across the globe is going to go down as an epic year. 2020 has made a lot of changes in the supply chain. And unfortunately, some of them were negative. But there are some silver linings. And so what we're looking at is that it's really expedited the way that we do business and that digital transformation in the supply chain. It has changed our reliance on technology and is speeding up the way that we do business. So just a few stats I want to share with you is 2.5% of U.S. electric vehicle sales were reached in March 2020, and 80% of automotive suppliers were impacted by the pandemic, and 43% decline year-over-year production for sales in June 2020. Now, David, I know you have a different stat for electric vehicles, which I think would be interesting to share here.
Yes, so it's very interesting. I was just catching up on the latest stats for the EV market sales. Now, everybody knows that the overall global sales of automotive have taken an absolute hit this year. But what's interesting is the market share of EV has increased. Now, the information that I received today is that EV market share has increased from 2.5 in March of this year to just shy of 4% to date. So although we are seeing, we're seeing a huge decline in the overall sales, the share percentage of EV is doubling. And that trend is going to continue to grow year on year on year. And I'm expecting to see that market share doubling year on year. So whilst COVID has been incredibly negative, it's actually had a positive effect, I believe, on that the electric vehicle sector.
All right, well, thank you. Let's go over some of the things that have happened in the past.
So again, if we look at, if we take this year as without saying, an unprecedented year, it's really highlighted the weaknesses and the inefficiencies in the process. And in this 1 year, we have suddenly all learned to work digitally, work from anywhere. And if we compare that to the past, in the past, if we look at the automotive sector, it was all about product maturity. It was always focused on high volume, small cars. If we look at the electric vehicle sector, it was very, very limited because of a lack of infrastructure. And as a sector, we weren't focused on design and personalization. It was just high volume, quick sales, and just repetitiveness. If we look at the present, we look at what's happening today. And today is, again, it's quite stark. What's happening today compared to 12 months ago is significantly different. But if we look at the improvements that we see in battery technology, in green technology that's going into vehicles, we're on an expedited trend going upwards. The Tesla effect has been validated. We can see that the electric vehicle sector that really has been started by and mass produced by Tesla, we know that this is going to be successful just based on the stats that we see today. We're seeing a much more focus on the larger and luxury segments. We look at those vehicles that are coming out. People want an experience today. It's not just a car that gets from A to B. A car today is, it's an entertainment, it's an infotainment unit. there is a lot more focus on design and personalization. We look at how the production line works today. You can walk around a number of automotive plants and you'd struggle to find the same car twice because everybody wants to personalize their car. Against that, we're seeing a huge tightening of environmental regulation. So we've got a double whammy of cost this year. We've seen the huge impact of COVID, but at the same time, there is a huge global focus on the green effect, the cleaner air, cleaner cars, more efficiency, getting rid of the emissions that are coming out. And we're also seeing a lot of new OEMs, but these OEMs are going to change the industry because they're not coming from an automotive background. They're coming from a technology background. We're seeing companies whose history may be in the clean energy sector. We've got companies experienced in wind farm. We've got companies coming from the mobile technology. You know, without saying the big boys, IBM, iPhone, Apple, Google, but there are a lot of smaller companies coming from that greener technology sector that are looking to become OEMs in the automotive sector. And then if we look at the future, the race is on for driving performance. Which car, which company is going to produce the more miles per charge? Which company can recharge that vehicle in the shortest period of time? That's going to be counterbalanced with cost competitiveness. You know, one of the downsides of some of the electric vehicles at the moment is the high cost. In order to get the volumes, those costs are going to have to come down. And this is where the technology companies are going to bring that, going to have that advantage because they know how to do that. They know how to drive costs down in high technology sectors. There's going to be a lot more focus on the differentiation of cars. There's going to be a lot more focus on design. As I mentioned earlier, people want an experience. So that infotainment aspect of a car is going to be critical. And the safety, but not just safety from a crash perspective, but the overall environmental safety of the car as well. I mentioned there's going to be a focus on the increase of mileage. We are going to be looking for governments to improve the charging infrastructure, because in order for those governments to hit their CO emission targets, they're going to have to find ways to improve the ability for the mass public to go down that EV route.
Perfect. Thank you. I'd like to take a break before we move to our next section and launch a poll question. Have you implemented automated electronic invoicing with a customer or supplier? This is just talking about the supply chain and kind of where we're moving to and overcoming some of those challenges that David is going to address with you in just a minute. So sharing the results, you're going to see that 33% of you said yes, 33% said no, and 33% not applicable. Tied across the board. I'm not really sure there's much discussion we can have there, David, but I'm going to hide it and we can move on to the next section about challenges.
What we're going to look at is really look at what has the last sort of 9 months taught us. If I think back to this time last year, you know, I was having meetings in offices, I was traveling, and it was very much sort of the normal way of doing things. Being in the UK, we have gone through some very stringent lockdowns. I'm still on lockdown today. In the last 9 months, I haven't had a face-to-face meeting. I haven't gone to a automotive plant. I haven't gone to the office. Everything that we've done has been in the cloud. Everything has been accessed anywhere. So we're going to look at what we've learned, what legacy technology has taught us, manual processes, the inefficiencies that we've all discovered that we weren't focusing on 12 months ago. But again, that all goes back to that legacy technology. I've spoken to so many colleagues, peers, friends in the automotive industry that when the shutdown occurred, they suddenly found themselves in a really difficult situation. They couldn't access their systems from home. If they had problems with the systems that they could access, it was difficult to actually get into the locations to resolve that because they were on-premise systems, old systems that they had to go and physically touch to repair. very few people had access anywhere automated systems, even down to the automotive scheduling. A lot of people, a lot of companies out there use web portals. A web portal, it's a great way to get access to data, but it doesn't analyze that data for you. And the systems that you needed to do that, guess what? Back in your plant that you can't get into. So I can download data, I can upload data, but I couldn't do anything with it. We're still seeing a lot of organizations using old, outdated communication methods. With the size of data that we're exchanging today, these companies have got to improve their infrastructure. We have got to be looking and treating every organization in that giga sector. You know, old-fashioned FTP, almost sort of dial-up speeds. We have to move on. And we still have a lot of organizations that have heavy requirements on support. They have spent a lot of time firefighting and being reactive, whereas they could reinvest, relook at their systems and become proactive. Again, these are things that we have really started to see this year. Again, something that has really stood out, because people weren't able to go into their plants, because they weren't able to watch processes happening. This is where we really started to see just how much was being done manually. Because we couldn't get access to systems, we couldn't get access to people, we started to see big gaps in how things were being done. Again, that manual download of information coming from our customers. It may be that somebody else was doing that and if sharing that data, suddenly that lifeline is gone. The manual uploading of ASNs and invoices, which whilst I'm in the plant and I can physically see what's going on, I'm able to capture issues and errors. But doing that manual sharing of data back to my customers when I never actually saw what was going on, it opened the doors for a lot of risk, a lot of supplier deviations and failures. Again, we know and we saw just how much we rely on complex and inefficient data analysis. The amount of people that were relying on Excel spreadsheets. Now they suddenly find themselves, they're at home. The only system they got to use is their laptop. This is where we saw how inefficient these systems are. We uncovered significant amount of duplication of processes to identify errors. Again, we were unable to do this duplication because we were not on site. We were not with the people that we rely on to work with. And we became disconnected. We became disconnected as an organization, as a sector. And just simple things, simple things like the creation of labels to go out on shipments suddenly became a big issue because I needed someone to press the button and that someone wasn't there. And all of these issues from a legacy technology perspective, from manual processes, they've really highlighted those inefficiencies and the waste that we have in there. We don't have the level of real-time validation that we need. We don't have automated notifications that can reach me no matter where I am. We're still relying on manual processes, buddy checks to prompt and identify errors. We really saw just how limited the integration with the tier 2 to tier N suppliers are. It was quite stark to see just how surprised the larger tier ones, the OEMs, how surprised they were when their supply chain started breaking down without zero notification. We've obviously seen, because of the huge reduction in volumes, a big impact on cash flow, but that's been expedited because so many suppliers are using outdated manual invoicing processes. Again, these people were not in their plants, not in their workplaces. This has really expedited that pain. We know that there are so many organizations with zero visibility. Again, relying on the phone, relying on meetings, relying on close working relationships with their supply chain partners. And suddenly everything was being done from home. The lack of access to reports and KPIs. Again, the trend here is visualization, visibility, communication. We really started to see how poor these processes have been adopted. And I think the one thing that COVID has really highlighted, and it's quite a surprise, is just how unprepared everybody was. And unfortunately, this isn't the first opportunity that we had to prepare. COVID is just the latest in a black swan event. We had the volcano in Sweden. That should have been a big warning. We had the unfortunate earthquake and tsunami in Japan. That should have been a big warning. And here we are with an even bigger black swan event, and we still had the same issues, the same problems, just on a much wider scale. And the unplanned costs and supplier penalties that will have been realized this year is only going to hurt this industry even more.
Thank you, David, for your thoughts on that. I think these challenges are really what has expedited the industry in a way that we never thought possible, global for sure. I wanted to share, this PDF is 7 questions to ask a data integration provider. This will help you work through some of those challenges and address them if you're looking to work with a partner or if you're doing an internal evaluation. I think this is a great piece of material to read and evaluate where you want to be and get your digital supply chain moving in the right direction. So I'm going to launch another poll question. Do you use digital communication with your tier in supply chain? Yes, no, or not applicable. And you'll see the results pop up on your screen. So 29% of you said yes, you are integrated with your tier in suppliers, and 57 no, and 14 not applicable. David, do you have any thoughts on this or anything that you'd like to share with the audience today?
So this is quite interesting, because if I just look at, and this is just a small straw poll, and what's unsurprising to me is the figures that I'm seeing here are exactly the same figures that we obtained in a global poll that we did 2 years ago. And we ran this poll over a number of thousand suppliers across the automotive industry, and the figures were almost about the same. And again, this is what I'm really saying. We've had plenty of warnings of the inefficiencies within the system, and we're not learning from those warnings. And we have got to get that yes and no significantly changed. Now, I would like us to be looking at the yes being in the 80%, the no being in the 14%. In order to achieve the efficiencies and the visibility across the supply chain, we've got to get those tier 1 suppliers digitally integrated into their tier 2s and beyond, if we want to bring the efficiencies we need in this sector.
Thanks, David. So overall, just some food for thought is that, what we're seeing and what David is saying again and again is that we have to create that digital supply chain from prototyping to full production. And I think it's very useful. When I was interviewing David the first time, is talking about the delays that can happen on the production side if it's not integrated. I'm going to let you take it away and share that story with us all. I think it was pretty impactful, and everyone on the line will be able to relate.
Absolutely. So if we think about the automotive industry, and I know there are differences across different OEMs, across the slightly different variants of automotive, but traditionally the automotive design to manufacture process is anything from a 3 to 5 year manufacturing phase. Year 1 is very much that design phase, the prototyping. That could creep into year 2, but if we keep it as a 3-year model for now, year 1 is design phase. Year 2 is that release candidate. We are proving the vehicle, we are proving the production line. We're really understanding how to build the car and build it correctly. And then we get into year 3, where we're starting to look at that standard operating production process. We're looking at customer saleable cars, and we're looking to ramp up that volume to that high volume that we're expecting to sell. That's the 3-year plan. Everybody is focused on achieving that production excellence. But we don't do that in the supply chain. For the first 2 to 3 years, everything's done manually. We're communicating with the suppliers via email. We're ordering parts manually. Suppliers are just shipping product in, not using the standard labeling, not implementing the standard delivery processes. Everything is done sort of hand to mouth, last minute. Then when we start getting to the point where the vehicle has been perfected and we want to start putting volume in, suddenly we start looking at the supply chain. Oh, we need to get the supply chain on the same process. We need to get integrated. We need to start sending out forecasts and schedules. And then you find out half your supply chain can't do that. And now you've got an issue where you're ready to build the volume, but your supply chain's not. They may be ready from a production perspective, but that lifeline of information, that instant access isn't there. So if we look at that process, so supply chain management, it's more often than not left until after we have got through that primary production phases. We are not proving the supply chain at the same time we are proving the car. So what happens is, as we get through that increased volume period, we then really start to find those supply chain issues that never came up in the design phase because everything was done manually. We were doing it from a more person-to-person process. As we get into the final phases of build, as those volumes increase, that's when suppliers start to struggle. Then we're suddenly faced with, wow, we've got to integrate the supply chain. It's an afterthought, and it's never seen as critical a process as the actual designing of the product itself. And we've got to change that. We have to align the two.
All right, let's talk about what happens when you put the supply chain first.
So again, let's take that same 3-year manufacturing process. Let's look at what's happened in the last 9 to 12 months with COVID. Suddenly, without any warning, we took 3/4 of our employee base and told them to stay at home. We had so many of these people suddenly couldn't connect. Yet within 8 to 12 weeks, we implemented that digital processes for people to work from home. Companies have spent months, if not years, debating over should we do this digital integration for communication. I don't want to do things in the cloud. It's not safe. Then suddenly COVID hit and we had no choice. And we did it. And we have seen so much success of companies that have just embraced that technology because they've had to. And we need to take that same approach to the integration, that digital supply chain integration process. We have to make sure and force that integration at the start of the process. Let's start implementing the correct processes from as early as possible. We're not just testing and proving the vehicle, we're proving the robustness of the supply chain. And by the time we get to that RC, that final job build, as we start getting into SOP, the supply chain isn't suddenly looking to get ready. The supply chain is ready. And the supply chain process, that full digital supply chain, then goes through that same volume ramp up as production. Instead of building the process, we're perfecting the process.
Okay, so aligning the product and supply chain development.
Every OEM brings suppliers in. If that organization is organized and ready, let's do the digital supplier enablement from the very first part of the engagement with those suppliers. Let's bring them into automotive best practice straight away. There are organizations such as the iCentral. We can manage that for you. We could take the problem of digitizing your supply chain away. But the whole point of this is identifying the supply chain issues in the pre-build phase. Because if you identify those issues at that point, the impact on production is significantly less. You have less impact and more time to resolve. We need supply chain integration to be in and working for both inbound and outbound. We need comprehensive supply chain workflows from the start. We're looking at full EDI. We're looking at those best practice business rules. We're looking at business as usual labeling at the very start of the process. Let's plan early, and having solutions designed to find and manage exceptions automatically, and then integrated not just with ERPs, but any system, and having that as part of the design phase. So at DI Central, we have created a solution called DI Automotive. DI Automotive is a supply chain management tool in the cloud. Everything that you do via EDI, via email, is all done in the cloud. It's secure, it's protected. But the most important aspect is its access anywhere. The processes behind the system are fully automated. We don't have to have somebody in an office pressing a button. Everything happens on demand. If we're creating a shipment, the labels get printed on creation. If that shipment is finished, the communication back to customers happens automatically. But because it's happening real time, because it's happening digitally, we are able to check every single aspect of the data and the process, both data coming in from our customers. We can check the data to make sure that our customer is actually giving the right data, the right part numbers, the right price. Is the shipment within our agreed delivery time? It's looking to find any area where it could cause a deviation to the supplier, or most importantly, unexpected cost. Again, if a customer changes their delivery time and we don't identify that early, that could result in additional cost to us for emergency transport, expedited transport, or a late shipment. All of these protections, these business rules, are automated and built into the system. And we've taken that technological leap. We are using smartphone technology, smart tablet technology. When a critical alert happens, we have a mobile app that tells us. So again, I'm getting the information I need anywhere.
I think that type of digital end-to-end transformation impacts so many parts of your business that it's really difficult to grasp. So we wanted to share this with you just to give you a snippet of what some of the benefits are for each individual division.
Correct. And if you think about that integration, that creation of that digital supply chain, the processes we're looking at here, these are all the processes that we are suddenly trying to implement in that final stage of the production process. What we're saying is, and what we have created, is a solution that enables all of this to happen at the earliest point within design. So that supplier demand process, the orders, the order changes, delivery schedules, the returning delivery notes, delivery receipts happening on receipt of the physical product. So within an almost real-time process, the customer not only knows what's coming, but the supplier knows exactly what was received. And if there is any deviation, it gives us that instant ability to react. All of this being turned and shared and digitally integrated, not just with an ERP, but any system, whether it's a WMS system, finance, production, sales. With the advancements in adapters and cloud technology, we can talk to any system, pushing that across the supply chain. The automotive supply chain is not just OEMs and tier ones. There are 3PLs, there are tier 2, tier 3, there are third-party finishers. There is a whole host of other partners that we rely on that we need to bring into this sector, into the digital supply chain. There's also the customer aspect. Once we've built the vehicle, making sure that we are tracking and monitoring that vehicle, giving the customers, the end customer, the end purchaser, more visibility of actually knowing exactly when their car's coming. And all of these processes are tied in to improve the finance process across the automotive. The further down the chain you become, the more manual and the more broken it is. And again, in order for this sector, this industry to survive, we've got to make sure that our suppliers are getting paid on time and right. You're taking that automotive mantra of right first time. We need to make sure that every supplier in the supply chain is getting paid right first time. if we want this industry to recover quickly and efficiently from the current crisis.
Great, thank you. I heard your office mate bark back there. I'm surprised mine's being as quiet. What we want to leave you with is a little bit of what we said when we started, right? So 2020 has really expedited the way that we're using technology, automation, and communication. And if you see all those different divisions that we just shared that are impacted, communication is key across the board. I mean, you can imagine trying to inform each silo of an activity at different times, and that can be very error prone. So automation and technology is key moving forward. David, do you have anything that you would like for everyone to walk away with today?
Yeah, I mean, I just everybody just take a few minutes and just think about how many different communication tools you've had to learn in the last 9 months. Prior to COVID, yes, as a company, we all use GoToMeeting. But suddenly, in order to be able to communicate with the wide plethora of customers I've got, I've had to learn how to use Teams. I've had to learn how to use the numerous other tools that are out there. Zoom drives me crazy. A lot more reliance on media systems. Doing business by video conference has become the norm. Closing deals without ever seeing my customer. How much reliance have you had working from home? Not just on technology, but the internet, cloud-based technology. We've taken a huge leap forward in being able to keep in business. We now have to take that same leap with our supply chain and production systems and use everything that we've learned. We know it works because we were forced to do it this year. So please don't stop. Let's keep going forward.
All right. Thank you, David. And, you mentioned cloud. So I think that that's a great transition into the first question for you today is that, when you and I started working together, and I've been interviewing you for quite a while, we were talking about on-premise and the switch to cloud. And there's some great examples. There are some, I don't know how you want to say it, but hesitance, I guess, against using the cloud. And I'd like for you to share your thoughts on that, on the on-premise solution versus a cloud solution and the security and safety around that.
So there's a number of ways, and I use a number of analogies quite often. But the first thing to look at is look at the cost efficiencies of moving your business systems into the cloud, passing the management of that to the people that actually are the experts. Our customers are manufacturing experts, automotive experts. We let you design and build the cars. We are supply chain management experts. We are cloud-based communication experts. Trust us to manage that for you. And then have a think about how you behave in your everyday life. Look at the technology that you use every day without even thinking about it. And the most common one that I focus on is your smartphone. Now, how many of you have got banking apps on your smartphone? You're sitting on a train, you're in your office, you're in a cafe, wherever you are, you get your phone out, you open your bank, you're looking at your bank balance, you may be paying bill, transferring money. How many of you actually sat back and thought about the security of that app before you went and did it? And yet we have spent, in some cases, years in discussions with people about putting that same system into their business. So we are quite happy to behave and use technology and move into the cloud for our personal stuff. But we have that hesitancy from a business perspective. And COVID has forced us to take that leap. And I hope we do not go backwards, because the efficiencies have only just started.
Perfect. So from a current customer, what is the difference between DI Automotive and the web-based EDI portal?
Oh, I like that question. That's a good one. So DI Automotive is a system that uses digital communication. It exchanges data with any system. It then allows you to analyze and use that data automatically. It provides it in a format that the end user can use, not somebody in IT. It provides information that is relevant to the people in planning, in supply chain. It enables the warehouse management to implement a paperless warehouse. It gives information to finance. It can actually tell somebody in finance exactly how much money is due based on invoices sent on a given day. Because it's not just exchanging data, it's utilizing and analyzing that data. A traditional EDI web portal in automotive is I go onto a website, I log in, I find my company name, I download a file. I put that file into Excel. When I want to send data back to my customer, I open the same web page and I manually type that data. A traditional web EDI portal just allows you to pass data quickly. It doesn't allow you to pass accurate and meaningful data.
All right. So the next question is, we have multiple systems in our business. How can we get the data into these systems in a cost-effective manner?
Well, I can only give you the answer really from a DI Central perspective. I mean, the advances in integration technology, the ability to talk to different systems has moved forward exponentially in the last few years. We have a revolutionary tool called a Universal Adapter. We are able to integrate into any system from a single source of data. So instead of just having one file going between our system and your ERP, we can break that data up. We can pass the relevant manufacturing data to your manufacturing system. We can share finance data with your finance system, but it's all done through a single integration tool. We're moving away from one-to-one transaction to transaction relationship, where you may have to have 10 or 12 different processes for one customer. We are able to have one process for all customers. So one order process, not just for one customer, all customers and all systems. And by doing that, we are able to implement and provide that solution at a fraction of the traditional EDI cost. And the Universal Adapter is able to talk to on-premise or other cloud-based solutions.
That was our final question, David. I want to thank you so much for joining us today and being on.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure as always. And if anybody has any further questions, you have my email address. Feel free to reach out and I'll be happy to have Teams or Zoom or GoToMeetings with any of you.
What about a good old phone call? Do those exist anymore, David? All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I appreciate your participation today in the poll questions and the live Q&A with David Eyes. Hope to all see you next month in January 2021.